quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog. It's where we all begin. Welcome to Lazy Dog Typewriters.
$54. It had a cool futuristic appearance and was designed in part by former Luftwaffe engineers. Despite its good looks, the Cutlass was underpowered, not a good thing for aircraft's carrier takeoffs and landings. To make matters worse, its engines had tendency to flame out when flying in the rain. The plane was called the Gutless Cutlass, Praying Mantis, and Ensign Eliminator. By 1957, the Cutlass was quickly abandoned. Unlike the Jet, the Sears Cutlass Typewriter was a top performer. Cool racing stripes, snappy touch, and creative power to spare. Let's learn more.
Howdy folks. Unlike the troubled Jet, the Sears Cutlass was ready to roar when it debuted in 1964. It started out as a customized Smith Corona 6 Series typewriter, as you see here, which was available from about 1962 to 1964. Then it disappeared, only to reappear in 1968 as this incarnation. Raise up a little bit. And what you see in front of you here is a 1970 Sears Cutlass, which retains the same cool racing stripe and logo, but is obviously an entirely different machine. This is essentially a Royal Custom, also sold as the Sears Portable in the late 1960s. And what probably happened was, towards the end of the Royal Custom line in the late 60s, very early 1970, 71, that Sears contracted with Royal to use up their remaining custom parts inventory and returned the Cutlass brand to service. So let's just do a quick comparison before focusing in on the later incarnation. Typewriter Minutes has a great video on his Sears Cutlass, which is this early variant made by Smith Corona. But let's just go over it really quickly. So it's a Series 6 model, which Sears has customized. They use the same beveled ribbon cover on their Citation and even the Constellation, I believe, all their C models. We have a touch control selector switch here on the left, which is a nice little knob. We've got dual change-a-type keys here with a dedicated 1 and a plus minus. We've got nifty features like a dedicated paragraph key. Your tabs are set and cleared right here on the front. Very nice, comfortable, wide spacebar. I love that feature. Of course, the most dramatic visual design element is this racing stripe, which of course would show up on the later custom Cutlass car. Your standard control switches on the rear and turning the carriage return levers here. Typewriter Minutes pointed out, as ours do too, that these are put on backwards, or at least opposite of almost all other Smith Coronas. So that's interesting, just a little oddity. Continuing on the visual impact here, your margins are set, as with all the Smith Coronas back here on the back. Just press and slide. You have your paper guide, you have your paper bail, and quick release carriage with the quick release platen mechanism, which just pops up and then you can pull that out. So all in all, a very nice machine. It has very good typing touch, but what we're here to talk about is the second incarnation of the Cutlass, and this is the Royal made Cutlass produced for Sears. So if you're familiar with this model variant, which was renamed so many different times from Custom to Safari, they really got a lot of mileage out of this design. It has a very nice aquatic look to it, a rounded shape. We'll zoom out just a little bit out to get you a little bit of a wider impact view. weather aspect view. We can see that, as with most Royals, we have, instead of tabs, they call them columns. So we have column clear and column set, and then of course the column key, which everyone else on the planet calls a tab, but that's what Royal called theirs. We do not have, interestingly enough, the magic margins on this particular model. So kind of jumping ahead, if you're setting your margins, you just use these little push sliders here. So it's interesting that they've kind of abandoned the magic margin, or decidedly less magic here on this incarnation of the Sears. The branding is continued on the back with Cutlass. It's kind of abbreviated. The racing stripe doesn't transmit all along the entire body panel, but just one little spot in the back. And then of course on the ribbon cover up here. But man, I got to tell you, the copper color that they used is just spectacular. Let's zoom up a little bit and get a look at that. Now, I would be hard-pressed to say which I prefer, the shimmering, beautiful copper color here or the very pretty dark burgundy. Both of these guys are really nice, and both of these guys are really good typewriters. So, continuing on your feature set, you've got your touch selector here, a low, middle, and high. We've already covered our columns, aka tabs, backspace, full keyboard. You don't have the change of key options, you just have a dedicated full keyboard on this. You have your line selector on the left hand side. You've got a 1, a line, and a 2, so 1, 1.5, 2. Your push button here will release the ratcheting mechanism so you can freewheel the platen, and you can do that on a permanent basis if you switch this lever down. Here now we have permanent freewheeling. These platens, unlike the Smith Corona models, do not come out as easily. You have to disassemble the side panels to get it out. And interestingly enough, these side panels on this Cutlass from 70 are made of a plastic. And I have had Royal Customs also in the past from earlier time periods, and they're made of metal. So I don't know if that was a cost-saving measure. I'm sure that it was. But they did a pretty job of matching the paint scheme with this copper color. Now let's open the proverbial hood and take a look at what's going on inside our Cutlass. Very snug fit with your ribbon cover. It has these metal prongs which stick into a clip, and that's one of the wear areas some of these Cutlasses have, is these little clips are just sort of not exactly spring steel, but eventually these will wear out and break, and thankfully ours have not. I have had, again, another Royal Custom that had a broken clip, and it kind of makes it a little bit rattly. But overall, very standard mechanism. You have a ribbon reverse system here, which requires eyelets to trigger. Works very fluidly. You've got your ruler guideline here to tell you what position you're at and where those margins have been set. So let's go ahead and put some paper in and do a paper test, typing test. As we're loading up the paper, one other thing I noticed is to mention is there is, in addition to not having the magic margins, you also don't have a paper guide on the left. You just have a little white tiny stripe to help you put the paper in where you want it to go. Just another feature set that was trimmed down just a hair, and you don't have, of course, a paper support. So let's give it a shot, see how she likes to type. Quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. And now that was one thing that happened right there. Is you got to be a little careful sometimes. We had a little bit of an impact. Yeah, we've got an impact on the ribbon cover with the A key, so we'll have to figure that out. Alright, one of the joys of vintage typewriters is getting those unexpected activities. We'd never had a problem typing before, but after I cleaned, adjusted, and reset this machine up, what was happening is the type bars were impacting the ribbon cover, and that's distressing. So I spent about 15 minutes going in trying to readjust the panels on the typewriter, the casing panels. None of that made any difference. So what I then tried to do, and we'll see if it worked out here in real time, is I noticed that at least one of these little rubber bumpers on the bottom underside of the ribbon cover was gone. So that was making the cover sit a little low, and I tried to move it back as far as possible, and I thought about putting a bumper here at the edge. You can sort of see from a plan view right there to keep the ribbon cover from scooting forward at all and to hold it back as far as possible. And I may still do that just to double belt and suspenders fix this, but I think we've got it fixed now by lifting up on the ribbon cover how it's sitting so that there will be more clearance for the type bars as they come up. So let's go ahead and put that in. Pop that down, and it's sitting a little bit higher. And let's go ahead and load up our paper again. Alright, we got our weird typing there. Let's try it again. The quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. Oh, no smashing, and look at that, we put it in red that time. Let's take a look up close. Just barely. So this has what looks to be an elite pitch. You can see the craziness that happened above. If you ignore BROSN, that's just me, but the lazy dog, it kind of knocked it into a whole different line. That's unusual, interesting. So those keys were not happy, but now they are happy, and that makes me happy. So sometimes you just have to improvise on these because it shouldn't be doing that. But raising it up has helped, and I even put a little bit of a bushing right in here between the plastic front carriage. Just anything I could do to try to let it move back, and I may not even need that. I may pull that out because it just puts a little bit of stress on this plastic that I don't want to put on there. But that's how it is with these vintage machines, is sometimes you have to engineer a solution for something, and the problem is you never know if you're Bubba or MacGyver. So hopefully that's more MacGyver than Bubba. Alright, so I have this interesting sheet here in front of us, a whole bunch of H's, right? And what you can see is this is actually an on-feet alignment. Hard to do with the camera. This is how we started out last night. So you can see that these H's, capital H lowercase, capital H lowercase, capital H lowercase to mimic typewriter minutes, crew are off. And so I spent some time making adjustments. And what I like to do is I have 1/4 right, since we have these fraction keys. I like to keep track of which way I'm turning the set screws because it's so easy to go off. And I'll show you where to make those adjustments here in a second, but you can see as you go along you're getting a little bit closer, a little bit closer. You generally want to start out with the lowercase, is what I've been told. You try to fix the lowercase first and get it, and you can see over here on the right, this machine has 2 settings, on the left side and on the right side, and that's a little bit uncommon because it is a basket shift, and typically basket shift, at least Smith Coronas, have a single set point in the middle, but on these basket shift Royals, they're on the left and the right side. So go figure, that's just how they did it. So let me manipulate the camera to see if I can't get you a shot of where those adjustments are made. Okay, so if you can look right here where I am pointing with this pen, maybe sharp one of the pen will be easier to see. All right, right there, that screw it adjusts your uppercase lowercase combination, and you have to loosen the lock nut, and then you can make very tiny adjustments to this set screw, which is right there. Zoom in there, and you have to figure out which way to turn it depending on what you want to do, and you have to figure out which is uppercase and which is lowercase, and that's always an adventure. But in this case, you can just look how the action works. So you know, okay, that screw is going to affect uppercase. So I need to figure out what I need to do to get the lowercase adjusted, etc., etc., etc. Okay, to sum up this review of the Cutlass typewriter in both its iterations, the Sears Model 6 S Smith Corona model, and then also the Royal Custom, aka Cutlass. So the pros on this Cutlass are it's got graceful, almost aquatic good looks. The copper color is really wonderful. I think I would have preferred it a little bit more if they had continued the design element by having the single racing stripe again, but they have kind of an homage to it, I guess, an abbreviated version, which is still cool, but I'd have tweaked it that way perhaps. It's a proven design. They made so many models, so many of these models, the Custom, the Safari, they had so many different names for it, Custom 3. It just works well. It's very nice. It's very comfortable to type on. Smooth typing action, has a full keyboard, as we can see. There are cons though, so there are some feature set trimming they did. There are no magic margins anymore. Some people would think that's a pro because those magic margins, and nowadays at least, can be a little bit tricky to operate, and these have very simple push to set, fire and forget, no need to make it complicated. So I'm waffling on my cons anyway. There are no change of key options if you're making a comparison between the two, but I think in reality those change of key, change of type keys weren't used very much, so that's not a huge con. And the big question is, well, which would you prefer if you could have only one? Well, of course, thankfully we don't have only one, we have both, so we feel doubly blessed. Really tough call. I love the metallic and the aquatic, but my first choice would probably be the original if I can only have one. The Sears Cutlass by Smith Corona. It's just a gorgeous red color. I like the racing stripe. It's all metal construction, except for the covers, which are plastic on both of them. But it's a really, really close race and almost a photo finish. They're both awesome muscle car typewriters, and we're happy to have had the chance to share them with you. Thanks much.
Please like, subscribe, and share.